10 spine-chilling horror videos you must never watch after dark. Unexplained secrets revealed. Sarah was scrolling through her phone, desperately searching for freelance work to cover the bills. The glow of the screen was her only companion in the dim, rundown living room of their Maplewood home. The tension in the air buzzed like static, every flicker of the dying porch light echoing her encroaching anxiety. That bizarre video title leapt out at her, on the fringes of her forlorn digital wanderings. 10 spine-chilling horror videos you must never watch after dark. Curiosity pulled her in like a moth to a flame. With each video, her heart raced harder. Shadows drifted in familiar suburban backyards. Laughter that once filled the air replaced by an eerie hush. In one flickering frame, a figure in a tattered coat crept around a hedge, eyes glinting under streetlights like shards of glass. The narrator's voice, low and sinister, whispered tales of a local cult who hid in plain sight, choosing their victims from unsuspecting families like hers. A cold shiver slithered down her spine. What if they lurked in the shadows of Maplewood? Suddenly, her friendly neighbor Mr. Thompson popped into her mind, always so kind and ever helpful. But as the next video rolled, showing a shadowy gathering at a once-abandoned community center, unease knotted in her stomach. Mr. Thompson visited that place late at night. The thought clung to her like a chilling mist, coiling tightly around her thoughts. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as her obsession grew, reality warped. The porch light flickered incessantly, the children's toys seemed to migrate overnight, and through her social media, fancy warnings began dancing across the screen, cryptic messages she first dismissed as pranks. Still, the tremors of dread grew. Late at night, when the house was silent, she thought she heard whispers through the floorboards, faint echoes of fear lapping at the edges of her sanity. The final straw came when Emma and Jake spoke of a friend they saw playing in the yard, a shadowy figure with a never-ending grin. Anxiety clawed at Sarah, gnawing away at her powerless heart. How could the world outside her door twist into something monstrous? When she approached the local police, their dismissal echoed hollow. Alone in a sea of uncertainty, her mind spun tangled threads of suspicion and terror. Friends who had confided in her about their odd experiences vanished without a trace, and with every corner turned, her cozy neighborhood morphed into a maze of shadows and silence. Then, on a dreadful stormy night, the final revelation hit her with bone-chilling force. She stumbled upon a post showing a gathering at that very community center, the same one Mr. Thompson was seen entering. Heart pounding, she realized a deep connection. Her trusted neighbor was caught in something dark and sinister. Just as she steeled herself to confront Mr. Thompson, she glimpsed movement from the corner of her window. A familiar silhouette, one she'd cherished. Then her phone buzzed with a merciless notification from the cult's account. "Don't let them know we're watching." Panic surged in her chest, blurring the line between trust and impending doom. Something was terribly wrong, and she was running out of time. Was she too late to protect her children? Sarah's heart thudded against her ribcage, each pulse an urgent reminder of the darkness closing in. She shook her head, trying to dispel the shadows weaving through her thoughts. No, not Mr. Thompson. But the notifications flashed across her screen, relentless, cold. Like teeth grinding against bone, and gnawing dread too real to ignore. She turned her back to the window, forcing herself to breathe, to think. The kids were upstairs, blissfully unaware of the horror creeping ever closer. A part of her wanted to shield them, to lock the doors, barricade the windows, and never let anyone in again. But could she really protect them? Was it safer to face the monster? Then, another notification chimed. This one read ominously, "We watch all, and we wait." The phrasing felt like a knife slicing through her composure, and she stumbled back, arms flailing, catching herself against the wall. Sweat trickled between her shoulders, and chills danced along her spine like icicles. The living room was shrinking, walls closing in. Shadows stretched, warped by the flickering light, until every corner morphed into a pair of eyes, watching, waiting. She grabbed her phone, biting her lip as her mind raced. To confront Mr. Thompson? To protect her children? Or to dive deeper into the rabbit hole threatening to consume her? She couldn't stay in this frozen moment of fear. She needed to act. She inhaled deeply, the air tasting stale, the smell of dust mingling with the ghostly fragrances of fear. Sarah snatched a flashlight from the drawer and headed to the door. A flicker of hope flared inside her. Knowledge might be power. If she could discover what the cult wanted, perhaps she could pull her family from the jaws of this hell. As she creaked the door open, the cacophony of rain against the porch matched the storm brewing inside her. Every instinct screamed to shut the door, but she pushed through, stepping into the rain-drenched night. The air was thick, electrified, almost alive. Each step toward Mr. Thompson's house felt like treading in treacle, heavy, slow, filled with dread. The shadows felt alive around her, brushing against her skin, whispers teasing her ears. Approaching Thompson's house, she noticed the windows were dark, but the front door stood ajar. No lights. No sounds. An unsettling quiet seeped from the gap, beckoning her forward but warning her to turn back. She stood at the threshold, trembling. Was he inside, waiting? Or had he vanished like the others? She couldn't waste time contemplating fear. As she stepped into the doorway, the hairs on her neck prickled, and the air turned icy. An unfathomable force seemed to repel her, urging her to flee. But before she could make up her mind, she heard a faint melody wafting through the house, sweet yet sinister, like the cacophony of chaos hidden beneath layers of tranquility. The chilling sound unfurled her thoughts. It echoed a song her children loved, a lullaby long forgotten, and with it, a sinking realization struck her like thunder. That melody would not be heard by her kids, only by those like Mr. Thompson. "Emma Jake," she whispered, the words swallowed by the void. With renewed urgency, she stepped further in, her flashlight illuminating dust motes swirling in the stagnant air. Each creak of the floorboards resonated through her bones as she called for her neighbor. But there was no response, only the persuasive pull of the melody. As she trudged deeper into the house, darkness enveloped her, the passage narrowing, closing in like a vice. Suddenly, a door slammed behind her, trapping her inside the sound-soaked silence, piercing her heart with fear. Amidst the creeping dread, another notification buzzed to life in her pocket. "We know you're here." Sarah felt her breath hitch. They knew she was coming. Had they been waiting this entire time? With a terror bordering on madness, she wondered if she could turn back before it was too late. But in the suffocating darkness of Thompson's home, each step forward felt like stepping deeper into a nightmare, and dread clenched tighter around her heart. What awaited her at the end of this haunted path? The final realization of the horrors hidden behind the facade of normalcy? The truth was twisting, just like the shadows, waiting to reveal itself. The air thickened, a suffocating presence wrapping itself around Sarah like a shroud. Her mind swirled with panic, but deep inside, something darker whispered. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was the cruel enticement of danger. The ominous melody wove through the corridors of Thompson's house, cradling her fears and secrets. She glanced back at the door, the way out swallowed in darkness. The cold air hummed with unsettling energy. Just then, the melody stopped, and silence draped itself heavily, leaving a hollow echo in its wake. Her heart raced, and she strained to listen. Had they sensed her? Was Mr. Thompson now waiting for her, lurking in the depths of the house, hidden away from the light? "Hello?" she ventured. Her voice trembled, barely breaking the stillness. No answer. The wall seemed to lean in, listening, hungry for her fear. Taking a shaky breath, she moved deeper into the belly of the house, her flashlight flickering as if it, too, was uncertain about this journey. The floorboards creaked underfoot, a cacophony of sound in the engulfing silence. She wished for the familiar laugh of her children, but all that remained was the cold echo of her own voice bouncing back at her, mocking. Sarah stumbled into the living room, the walls stretching unnaturally in every direction. Dust motes danced in the beam of light, resembling specters of the past. A faded couch sat in the center, swallowed by shadows, and an old coffee table layered with dust as thick as memories long forgotten. The atmosphere was charged, tense. Something lurked just beyond the edge of her vision. Without warning, a figure materialized at the far end of the room. Her breath hitched, and she froze. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white dress, her hair cascading like a veil over her face. She stood motionless, lips moving, whispering words that never reached Sarah's ears. "Who are you?" Sarah called. The question burst from her lips like a distant echo. Her heart hammered in her chest, pounding a frantic rhythm that would surely give her away. The figure continued to whisper, her ghostly tone intertwining with the muted melody that resumed once again, now more potent, a siren's call beckoning from the shadows. Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes, fighting and clawing their way past her panic. She stepped back, colliding with something solid, a large bookshelf blocking her exit. She turned her flashlight towards the woman, but where light should have illuminated, darkness consumed it, twisting the beam into nothingness. "Come join us," the woman's voice beckoned, smooth yet sharp, like glass dipped in honey. The shadows coiled around her, suggesting a twisted invitation. Her instincts screamed to flee, to wrench herself free of this nightmare. But her feet remained glued to the floor, rooted in place by an unseen force, the spectre-esque voice wrapping around her like chains of ice. Suddenly, the front door banged open. The rain lashed against the house, and in the flickering light, Sarah caught a glimpse of other figures, more people in white drifting into the room, faces devoid of features, surrounded by a fog of despair. "Join us," they chanted softly, voices dripping with the same melody that had haunted her. And no longer able to fight the tide of terror, she turned, dreading the thought of weaving through the spectral crowd. With desperation clawing at her insides, she hurled herself toward the back door, scrambling through the twist of figures, feeling their cold presence brush against her skin. Just as she grasped the handle, she felt it, a sudden, sharp chill pierce through her chest. The air thickened around her lungs, and for a moment, she hesitated. "Sarah," a familiar voice broke through the chaos. "Help us." Her heart sank. It was Emma and Jake. The realization gripped her like a vice. They were caught in this nightmare too, just beyond her reach. "No!" she shouted, whipping around to find them. But the crowd of specters had closed in, their collective whisper rising in a terrifying crescendo. The weight of their gaze pressed against her, and suddenly, the darkness swelled in the corners of the room, threatening to engulf everything. With a surge of adrenaline, she launched herself into the crowd, desperation swirling with purpose. As she fought her way through, a piercing scream echoed. Was it her kids? Or was it a figment of her crumbling mind? Just then, a bright flash erupted beside her. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. But who? Friend or foe? In that fleeting moment, dread spiraled tighter around her, and Sarah realized she was no longer alone, and perhaps the shadows had been watching her all along. What awaited her if she could reach her children? A final confrontation with power? Or a deeper plunge into the abyss that threatened to consume them all? The room constricted as Sarah fought through the spectral crowd. Figures in tattered white drifted like ghosts, their features indistinct, but their hollow eyes seemed to pulse with an unhealthy hunger. "Join us," they called, their whispers weaving through the air, pulling at her mind, a sinister lullaby that begged her to surrender. Suddenly, the figure that had emerged from the shadows stepped into the flickering beam of her flashlight. It was a man, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperation. "Sarah!" he called, recognition flickering in his gaze. It was Tom, a neighbor, someone she hadn't seen in ages. "You have to get out of here." She hesitated, then reached for him. "Where are Emma and Jake?" Thomas' eyes darkened, and he shook his head. They're trapped in the basement. You have to hurry." The specter shifted, almost like they were pulling away to let her pass, but she felt the cold tendrils of their power working to wrap around her. "No!" she cried, feeling despair clawing at her throat. "I can't leave them. Trust me, if you ever want to see them again, we need to go." Tom pleaded, his voice a raw whisper. A scream pierced the air, chilling her to her core. It was high-pitched, filled with a terror that made her blood run cold. "That was them," she gasped, panic flooding her bones. Tom's hand grasped her wrist, and he pulled her toward the door they had come through. The shadows seemed to stretch, reaching for her as she stumbled, wavering between the desire to flee and the desperate need to save her children. "Sarah, now!" Tom urged. He dragged her past the thrumming figures, their whispers growing fainter as they turned their attention back to those they sought to ensnare. Just as they reached the door, a massive gust tore through the house, rattling the windows and sending dust clouds swirling like wild specters themselves. Sarah's heart raced. Had the house just shuddered? Or was it a cry of protest from the very walls surrounding her? "No," she said out loud, fury and fear colliding within her. "I will not leave without them." Her determination sparked something in Tom's eyes. "Then we'll find them together. Just focus." He pushed open the front door, and they stumbled out into the rain-soaked night, darkness swallowing them as the wind howled. Once outside, the world felt eerily distorted. The moon struggled behind thick, angry clouds, casting unnatural shadows across the yard. Sarah felt the weight of the house behind her, the oppressive presence clawing for her to return. Panic flared anew. "Which way, Tom?" "Back toward the garage." "They may have gone there," he shouted, pointing into the downpour. The rain fell in sheets, pounding against her skin, barely masking the voices calling within the house. They barreled across the muddy ground, slipping and sliding, heartbeats echoing in their ears. The garage door creaked open, as if inviting them in. "It's dark," Tom warned, but they pressed on, plunging into the inky blackness. Sweat mingled with rain running down her face, and the faint echo of whispered chants drifted through the darkness like smoke. "Emma!" "Jake!" she called, desperation gnawing at her insides. "Sarah!" A voice, almost drowned out by the storm, reached her ears. The sound pierced through the gloom, tugging at the strings of her heart. She turned, eyes wide, breath racing. "I'm coming!" she yelled, racing deeper into the shadows. As she moved, flickers of movement caught her eye. Shadows stirred amidst the clutter of the garage, swirling unpredictably. Her skin prickled, and she could feel the moist heaviness of the air around her, saturated with dread. A figure loomed at the back, thin, almost skeletal in silhouette. Sarah had hissed, a familiar voice barely recognizable through the bone-chilling darkness. "Emma?" she gasped, fear screaming through her veins. But the figure stepped forward, revealing a face buried in shadow. "Join us," it whispered sweetly, words oozing like poison. And just then, Sarah understood she was being cornered, trapped between choices that could lead to salvation or despair. The darkness cast its web tighter around her, and she gritted her teeth, caught in a moment of decision. Would she summon the strength to confront the shadows? Or would the lure of surrender pull her under, dragging her to join the chorus of whispering specters forever? As the figure reached for her, forcing her to look closer, she noticed it was not just Emma. It was something more, something sinister, and suddenly she wasn't sure what she would find in the depths of that darkness. Her resolve shook, heart hammering, as the world around her twisted with ominous energy. Could she save her children before becoming another lost soul of Thompson's cursed home? And in that moment, the shadows closed in with bated breath, eager to see what she would choose next. In an instant, time froze. The figure, moving closer, blurred at the edges. It was Emma, or at least it looked like her. Sarah's heart raced, pounding like a war drum in her chest. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice cracking as she stepped back, slipping on the damp concrete. "Mom?" The figure croaked, the voice a twisted echo of familiarity that chilled Sarah to the bone. "Help me." Tears stung Sarah's eyes. "I'm here, baby. Just stay right there." The darkness pulsated around them, the walls of the garage seeming to bend inward, like the house was a living beast hungry for its prey. Sarah felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a dozen whispers drowning out her thoughts. Join us, Mom." The plea rang out again, sharper this time, followed by another chilling whisper, "You need to join us, Sarah. It's better here." No. Desperation ignited her voice, slicing through the haze of dread. She couldn't look away from Emma's face, the shadows clinging to her like spider silk. "What did they do to you?" An unnatural grin spread across Emma's face, twisted and wrong. "They just want us to be together, Mom, forever." The word hung heavy between them. Sarah clenched her fists. "No. This isn't you. Mom, please." Emma's shoulders slumped, a flicker of the real girl surfacing before the shadows seized it once more. "You can save us, don't listen." Tom's urgent voice cut through her turmoil. "It's a trap. It wants you to give in, to let them take your soul." The figure inched closer, fingers elongating unnaturally, stretching toward her like hungry tendrils. "Mommy, I'm scared. What if this isn't real?" Sarah thought, desperation clawing its way up her throat. The apparition was too perfect, too haunting. What if they were not even there? The house twisted her memories, spinning them into something foul. "No!" she screamed again, louder this time. "You're not my daughter. You're a monster." The shadows shrieked, recoiling from her words as if burned. But the pale figure faltered only momentarily. "Join us, join your children." With a fierce surge of determination, she surged forward, gripping Emma's wrist tightly. "I will not let you take my family." The figure shrieked, the monstrous laughter of the shadows echoing around her. Despair crept in again, wrapping around her heart like a vice. In that tempest of fear, memories flooded her mind. Emma laughing at the dinner table, Jake's wide-eyed joy as he played outside, the warmth of their embraces. Mom, the figure rasped, voice laced with a venomous sweetness. "All it takes is one step, just one. What if I can't find them?" Sarah thought, her breath coming in short gasps. The dark engulfed her senses, dread mingling with urgency. What if this is all I have left? But a flicker ignited within her, a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could break the spell. "If you're really Emma, you'll fight these things with me." For a moment, silence ensured, the figure froze, and shadows hesitated, as if Sarah's words had unmanned them. "Mom, help!" Then the garage rattled violently, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. Sarah was thrown back, struggling to regain her footing. Tom caught her, urgency blazing in his eyes. "We need to find the basement. That's where they're holding Jake. I can feel it." "But Emma, trust me. You can't save them while you're trapped in this nightmare." Their decision was made. Tom pulled Sarah toward the exit, darkness swirling and snapping at their heels like angry vipers. Just as they reached the threshold, the skeletal figure lunged, catching the hem of Sarah's rain-soaked shirt. "Don't leave me." It screeched. With a primal scream, she ripped away. I am not your prisoner. Tom yanked the door wide, rain cascading in, drenching them anew. Now! Quickly! And they burst into the night, hearts pounding, but an unspeakable dread followed them. Were they truly free? I can feel it, Tom said, eyes darting back toward the malevolent house. We have to get to the basement before they get their hands on us. As they dashed away from the garage, a chilling whisper, a singular voice filled with malice echoed behind them. You can't hide, you belong to me. Terrified, they moved faster, eyes set on the looming darkness of the basement door, their breaths labored. Mom! A familiar cry echoed from somewhere deep inside. Was it truly Jake? Or was it another lure, another trap hidden in the shadows? As they approached the opening, the air grew colder, a dark void radiating an evil that twisted their insides. Would they plunge into the darkness below, or would this be the place they'd meet their end? And just then, as the door creaked open, the shadows whispered once more, join us. The basement door creaked open, revealing a staircase descending into an abyss of shadows. The chill in the air clawed at Sarah's skin as she hesitated on the threshold. The echoes of Jake's voice filled her mind, mingling with the shadows that swirled around them. We have to go, Tom urged, his tone taut with urgency. With one last glance back at the house, a grotesque silhouette against the starless sky, they plunged into the darkness. Each step felt like it was dragging them deeper into a choking void. The scent of mildew and decay suffocated the air, as if the walls themselves were exhaling their own death. Jake? Sarah called out, her voice cracking. Can you hear me? The emptiness amplified her fear, the walls tight like a coffin trapping her soul. She could almost feel those sinister whispers creeping closer, wrapping around her like a noose. You are not alone, the echo taunted. Tom's flashlight flickered, illuminating the damp walls. Shadows danced across the floor, twisting and spiraling into forms that seemed to mock them. Stay close, he said, gripping the beam tight. They moved further down, and with each step, the floor creaked ominously underfoot, as if it were protesting their presence. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the oppressive silence, a childish laughter, innocent and sweet. Jake! Sarah's heart surged with hope. But it was immediately followed by the haunting echo of that twisted whisper. Join us, no. Get back. Tom barked, cutting through the confusion. He pointed the flashlight toward the source of the laughter, but only shadows awaited them. An illusion? Panic clawed at Sarah's throat, tightening, suffocating. It's a trick. Mommy! The voice echoed again, an all too familiar call that twisted her heart. Was it really him? Tom's expression hardened, his grip tightening around her arm as he scanned the darkness. We need to keep moving. This place, it's alive. Terror surged through Sarah. But maybe he is just down there, maybe we can save him. Don't you see? They're manipulating you. Tom urged, his voice rising above the menacing whispers. We have to find a way out. But then, as if in answer to their plight, the walls began to pulse, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The ground shifted beneath them, sending them stumbling forward. Where is the way out? Panic surged through Sarah's mind. She felt the shadows swell around her, their cold fingers brushing against her skin, seeking to pull her back into the madness. She refused to give in. If only she could just find Jake. If only she could hear that laugh, her heart screamed. But each sound was a trap, twisting her memories into nightmares. They pressed on, reaching a landing where a heavy iron door loomed ominously, painted with dark symbols that pulsed like they were alive. This is it, Tom said, determination weaving through his voice. The basement, this is where they keep him. He pushed against the door, but an invisible force shoved back with equal ferocity. No! Sarah gasped, bracing herself against it. I can feel him, he is there. She pressed her forehead against the cold iron, her breath hitching as terror gripped her. "Jake!" she screamed. Silence choked the air in response. Had it all been a trick to draw them closer to despair? Then came a series of heavy thuds, like footsteps coming from the other side. Sarah's heart raced. "It's him! He is there! Get back!" Tom pulled her away just as the door shuttered violently. The whispers escalated, wrapping around them like chains, clawing at her resolve. "Join us!" The voice was louder now, primal and mocking, as the door buckled again. "Mom, help!" The cry she thought she might have lost echoed from within, solidifying their dread. Was it really Jake? Or yet another cruel imitation meant to ensnare them? As Sarah's mind spiraled with confusion, she felt the shadows closing in, eager to engulf her. "Hold on!" Tom shouted, his eyes fierce with resolve. Together, they braced themselves against the door, determined to fight whatever lay beyond. The thudding grew louder, the darkness inched nearer, and Sarah felt her instincts scream. They had to push forward. In that harrowing moment, they made a choice to confront the terror, to challenge the shadows that preyed upon their fears. But just as they gathered their strength, the door exploded inward with a bone-rattling crash, revealing a blinding light that made everything feel unreal. And at the edge of the light, a figure stood, shrouded in the brilliance. Who was it? Would they find help, or another nightmarish fate lying in wait? The light burst forth, illuminating the basement in a dazzling white that felt almost alive, throbbing like a pulse. The figure at the edge shimmered, its features indistinct, blending into the brightness, but the aura exuded a palpable energy that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Jake?" she cried, her voice quivering with hope and fear as she stumbled towards the brilliance. Tom's hand shot out, grasping her arm tightly, pulling her back. "Wait!" he urged, his breath hitching. "It's a trap!" But as he spoke, the figure took a step forward, the blinding light drawing them in like moths to a flame. A face began to form, familiar and taunting. "Mommy, help!" The voice that came from the light was unmistakably Jake's, childlike, desperate. The deep yearning pierced through Sarah's heart, almost overriding the warning spinning in her mind. "Jake!" she shouted again, but the moment was consuming her, each step forward blurring her judgment. "Don't you feel it?" The figure spoke now, its voice a perfect mimicry of her son's, echoing through the darkened walls. "I'm waiting for you. Come play." "Sarah, don't." Tom gritted his teeth, the flashlight flickering as if protesting the force surrounding them. But she was already moving, her body betraying her mind. She was caught in the gravity of hope that twisted into desperation. As she reached the edge of the light, the glow dimmed, revealing not the warm embrace of her son, but a gnarly, twisted mass of shadows wrapped around something small and helpless at its center. It was Jake, or what seemed to be him, eyes wide and filled with unshed tears. A chill swept through Sarah. "What have they done to you?" she gasped, her legs trembling. But instead of responding, the figure laughed, a sound sickeningly sweet, dripping with malice. "Join us," it whispered, the words slithering through the air. The shadows elongated, creeping toward her as if yearning to lock onto her limbs, to pull her deep into the void awaiting beneath the gleaming surface. "Get back!" Tom shouted, yanking her back hard. Somehow, she stumbled, crashing into him, and they both fell. As they hit the damp ground, darkness lashed out, fierce and tight, wrapping around their ankles, trying to drag them down. "Make it stop!" She clawed at the shadows, gnashing at her skin, but they twisted and coiled, more alive than anything she had ever experienced. With every ounce of strength, they scrambled to their feet, backs pressed against the iron door, the symbol pulsing with an insatiable hunger for the chaos unfolding. "We need to break through," Tom said, urgency heating his voice. "Now!" They pressed against the door together, but it wouldn't budge. The figure twisted within the light, frolicking closer, a grotesque play that made Sarah's stomach churn. "Sarah, I'm scared." Jake's plea rendered her drenched in despair. "No! This isn't real!" she shouted, but each word felt like a thread unraveling from a tapestry of safety. She turned her gaze from her son's visage, torn by both longing and dread. The whispers morphed into shrieks, rising, clawing at the cracks in her resolve. She could feel them burrowing into her soul, threatening to dampen her will with despair. Then she caught a glimpse of something moving just beyond the light, a shape hunched and looming. It was massive, dark, almost like a form of pure malice gloating at their struggle. "Look!" Tom screamed, and for a heartbeat, the glow faded, revealing sinister eyes glimmering with malicious joy. A grin spread across the darkness, teeth sharp and white as bones in the night. "Join us," the shadows charged, greedy to feast on their terror. Sarah felt her heart stutter, caught between what could be and what might be the end. The last barrier of light faded as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving them in an all-consuming darkness, and for a split second, everything was silent. Then came a deafening roar, echoing through the basement like a thunderclap that shook the ground beneath them. What now? In this hellish abyss, would they succumb to the darkness or find a way to fight back? The question loomed as oppressive as the shadows that surged closer. The roar shattered the silence, a brutal sound that echoed in Sarah's chest, making her heart race even faster. The air grew heavy, thick with a dread that seeped into her bones. The shadows pulsed, swirling like a storm around them, the whispers rising to a feverish pitch. Darkness clawed at their skin, cold and unyielding, as the horrifying form pressed closer. She squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to block out the visions. Jake's small body entwined in the monstrosity, contorted, reaching, trapped. "We have to get out!" Tom shouted, his voice breaking through her haze of horror. "We need to find a way!" The walls around them seemed to pulse in rhythm with the darkness, as if the very foundation of the house were alive. "What if we break the door?" she suggested, her voice trembling but filled with a hint of determination. "It might lead us to safety." Tom glanced at the door behind them, veins dark with fear, but also flickering with a hint of resolve. "On three," he said, voice steadying. They stepped away from the shadow's grasp, adrenaline firing through them. 1, 2, the shadows hissed, a symphony of anguished whispers swarming around their ears, stealing their breath. Time slowed. Sarah felt a sinister presence looming behind her, drawing close with a hunger that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. Cold sweat dripped down her spine. 3. They slammed against the door with everything they had. The impact reverberated within the darkness, but it held firm, unyielding, as if mocking their attempts. "Again!" she gasped, heart pounding louder than the beats of the shadows surrounding them. They collided once more, desperation fueling their efforts. On the third blow, the door shifted, a shallow creak sounding above the monstrous growls, just enough to spark a flicker of hope. "It's working!" Sarah cried, glancing at Tom. But the spark was fleeting. The entity let loose an ear-splitting laughter, a cacophony of taunts that chilled her to the core. "You think you can escape?" it taunted. "Your hopes will drown in despair. Shut up!" she screamed, flinging herself into the door again, feeling the edges of her sanity splintering. Suddenly, a pair of icy hands gripped her shoulders, freezing her in place. "Let go!" she shouted, trying to shake free, but the hands tightened, pulling her backward. She twisted her head, and the sight sent a wave of nausea crashing over her. The figure loomed closer, a grotesque blend of shadow and the form of her son. "Mommy," it echoed, voice layered in malicious glee. "Why won't you join us?" "No!" she shouted, her voice hoarse with panic. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She felt every ounce of her will waver under the weight of Jake's voice mixed with that of the darkness. Tom yanked at her waist, pulling her with all his strength. She crashed back into him, trying to regain her footing amidst the encroaching dark. The air filled with screams, a symphony of anguish that clawed at her mind. "We can't give up, Sarah." "We can." A booming crash interrupted him. The entire basement shuddered. A fissure cracked in the wall to the left, dust and debris raining down around them. The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if repelled by the light creeping through the crack. "Look!" Tom yelled, pointing frantically. The light seemed to beat against the dark like a heart emerging from a grave. "We can use that." But the sinister laughter rose again, louder, angrier, as the darkness surged, engulfing the crack. "Run!" she shouted, her instincts kicking in. They dashed toward the fissure, hearts hammering, only to find the shadows snapping at their heels. Could hope still flicker amidst despair? Sarah glanced back, the evil presence howling, lashing against its boundaries, like a wave crashing against rocks. They lunged toward the light, desperation morphing into power. But would they reach it? Or would the shadows consume them entirely? The walls pressed tighter, fear wrapping around her throat as darkness erupted once more, ready to claim its prey. Light flickered, a beacon in an ocean of despair, but it felt like a cruel illusion. As they ran, the shadows lashed out, claws of darkness scraping against their skin, leaving traces of ice in their wake. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, each inhaled tight with panic, her heart pounding like a drum echoing a desperate message to fight or flight. "Faster!" Tom shouted, pulling her forward, but she could feel the oppressive weight of the dark pressing against them, threatening to drag them down into the abyss. They pushed toward the crack, the golden glow growing brighter, beckoning like a siren. But as they neared, the shadows writhed, a living force of malice determined to claim them both. "Don't look back. Just focus on the light," Tom barked, his eyes wild. But Sarah couldn't help it. A nagging fear clawed at her, urging her to catch a glimpse of the monstrosity pursuing them. Watered-down memories lured her a moment she shared with Jake, a smile brightened by summer's warmth. It seemed just out of reach, swallowed by the encroaching horror. The fissure loomed closer, but the darkness swelled, filling the space like smoke-thickening air. She tasted the salt of tears mingling with fear. What if they never reached it? The thought sent a tendril of ice through her stomach. Panic surged as she stumbled, grabbing Tom's sleeve. "We can't let it take us." He tugged her forward, every step an act of defiance against the despair threatening to engulf them. "We'll make it, Sarah. Just a little more," he urged, but his voice trembled with an uncertainty that echoed deep within her. The shadows howled, a dreadful chorus of anguish erupting around them. "Join us, Sarah." "Join him," the entity crooned, its voice oily and dark, bending reality around them. It twisted her memories into grotesque images, flashes of Jake's small face filtering through her mind like remnants of a dream she couldn't quite grasp. "Don't listen," Tom screamed. But the weight of the whispers pulled at her, drowning her in doubt, drowning her in memories of Jake's laughter and innocence. She stumbled again, fear enticing her to give in, to let the darkness wash over her like a wave. With newfound resolve, Sarah lunged toward the light. She could feel the warmth seeping into her bones, the darkness hissing and recoiling. "I'm not done fighting!" she screamed, adrenaline sparking through her veins as Tom's grip steadied her against the chaos. They finally reached the crack. Light burst forth, blinding and fierce, illuminating the oppressive shadows momentarily. Sarah felt a surge of hope, a connection to everything she fought for. "Go!" she urged Tom, pushing him toward the edge as shadows lashed at them, desperate to pull them back into despair. The ground shook under their feet, the darkness howling for its lost prey. As she stumbled toward the fissure, something latched onto her leg, a tendril of shadow, cold and unyielding. It fought against her, pulling her down, down into the depths of horror. "Tom!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her voice. His eyes widened in shock as he extended his hand. She reached, grasping for him, while the presence behind her cackled, baring its grotesque teeth. "Help me!" But the shadows were relentless, dragging her slowly into their chilling embrace. Her vision darkened, the light flickering like a dying star, and in that moment, everything froze. "No!" Tom shouted, plunging forward to grip her wrist. The struggle intensified, hope wavering like a candle in a tempest. They fought, hearts racing, but would it be enough? Everything blurred as the shadows threatened to engulf her completely. She felt herself slipping away. Was this the end? And as the crack began to close, sealing them away from whatever hope existed beyond, Sarah's mind raced with one thought, a single chilling question. What would happen if they fell into darkness and never returned? In that fraught moment, time hung precariously. Sarah could feel every heartbeat as the shadows clawed at her, wrapping around her like a cold vice. Tom's grip was the only lifeline amidst the chaos, the tether keeping her anchored to hope. "Hold on," he grunted, straining against the weight of darkness pulling her back. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, she saw the fierce determination shimmering in his gaze. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for Jake. For family. With adrenaline surging, Sarah summoned every ounce of strength within her, sending a desperate surge through her arm toward Tom. "We want to give up," she yelled, her voice slicing through the deafening horror that howled around them. The shadows hissed, angry and frustrated as if they fed on fear. They tightened their grip on Sarah, but she wouldn't bow. She visualized her children. Their laughter, their innocence. She thought of Emma's warm hugs and Jake's bright smile. Memories fueled the fire in her spirit. "We're almost there," Tom shouted, struggling but not breaking. He pulled her closer, with a fierce determination that ignited her resolve. It's slipping." Sarah's breath came in panic bursts, the shadows tensing like a predator about to pounce. Her vision wavered on the edge of darkness, threatening to pull her under. "Now!" Tom screamed, his voice punctuated by urgency. With one final effort, he yanked her toward the light, and she felt a rush of warmth envelop her, the shadows shrieking in rage. She pushed forward, elbowing through the gloom with everything she had left. The crack opened wider as they neared it, light flooding in, and every shadow hissed and recoiled, lost in the force of their joint will. In a split second, she was flying toward the fissure, Tom right beside her. The shadows lashed out, igniting the air with a bitter chill, but she kept her eyes on the light. That radiant hope had become a lifeline, and she grasped it fiercely. "Mom!" came the heart-wrenching cry that felt like a fiery dart to her soul. "Jake!" She turned, terror screaming through her veins as the void closed around them. She fought against the shadows, pulling Tom with her as they lunged into the crack. "Hold on," Tom urged as a monstrous growl erupted from the dark, the shadows clawing at their heels, desperate to reclaim them. With a final stride, they burst through the fissure into the radiant light. Pain gripped her chest as they landed hard on the cold earth outside, the overwhelming, suffocating dark jarring against the dazzling brilliance that surrounded them. "Jake!" The whisper of shadows evaporated into nothingness behind them. The warmth of safety enveloped her, wrapping around her like a vivifying embrace. Her heart raced with adrenaline, but the light pulsed softly, urging her to rise, to keep moving. "Mommy!" A familiar, small voice broke through the deafening silence, and there he was. In the glow, Jake stood, wide-eyed and frightened yet unmistakably whole. "Jake!" She sprinted toward him, wrapping him in her arms, pulling him close as if to shield him from the horrors that lurked just beyond the light. "I was so scared," he cried, clinging to her, burying his face in her shoulder. "I know, honey. It's over now. We're safe, she whispered, pressing her cheek against his head, tears spilling freely. Tom joined them, a breathless smile on his face, relief washing over his features. "We did it," he said softly, kneeling beside them. Emma appeared, running toward them with bright eyes filled with warmth that surged through Sarah like sunlight after a storm. "I thought you would leave me," Emma gasped, wrapping her arms around her mother and brother. "No way," Sarah replied fiercely. "We'll always be together. Always." They drew into a huddle, united against the faint whisper of darkness left behind. The shadows of fear had tried to trap them, prey upon their minds, but love had tied them together, shattering the grip of despair. As dawn broke overhead, the brilliant light consumed the remnants of the night. It spread across Maplewood, illuminating the quiet homes, the familiar sights of their suburban life. They turned to look back at the ominous silhouette of Mr. Thompson's house, but now it stood silent, a forgotten husk in the rising sun. Sarah took a steadying breath, feeling the sun on her skin. The storm had passed, shadows had receded, and in that moment, their family was whole again. She intertwined her fingers with Jake and Emma, vowing never to let the darkness creep back in. "Let us go home," she said, her voice steady, empowered with love and belonging. And with that, they walked together toward the promise of a new day, shadows fading into the background of their lives, leaving the terrifying night behind. In the end, they had fought for their lives and for each other, and they emerged not just as survivors, but forever bound by love, ready to embrace whatever the future held. But remember, our story doesn't have to end here. If you want to dive deeper into more spine-chilling tales and witness more epic adventures, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button for the algorithm. Trust us, it makes a huge difference. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's build this community together.